Good morning, Night City! Welcome back to W-BALNC, my chooms and choombadas, your one-stop shop for everything East Coast, here in this desolate West Coast wasteland. That's right, your lifeline to Charm City has returned, that oh-so-hallowed corner of the Boss Wash corridor that still has a little bit of sunshine in it. I don't know what brought you poor unlucky fuckers all the way out here to Old Night City, but hey, I'm certainly glad you made it. My ratings, thank you. Today, we've got a special report from yours truly, a new segment we are calling Welcome to Night City. Just a quick little slice of time where we talk about the history of this slightly radioactive, stinking shithole we now call home. The gangs, the corpse, the movers and the shakers. We're going to bring them all back to you here at W-BALNC. Who knows? Maybe it'll help some of you stay alive out there in the concrete jungle. Tonight, we are going to be talking about a gang which has all but disappeared in Night City streets, but what used to be a big player. I hear that they're still big over in their native Japan, but fuck do I know, right? I'm talking, of course, about the Steel Dragons, that roaming motor gang that used to be headed by the world-famous Yorinobu Arasaka himself. What's that? I hear you gasp? The head of one of the world's largest and most powerful corporations formed a gang? Why, yes, my poor little chromed-out fiends. Yes, he did. And let me tell you, it's times like this I'm glad we're pirate radio, or else even bringing this up would get the whole station shut down faster than you could say cold Sapporo. But how did the rock star black sheep of the Arasaka family end up leading his own booster gang, I hear you ask? Well, for that, we have to go way back to the far-off distant year of 2015. Fucking forever ago, I know, but what can you do, chooms? Yorinobu is older than he looks. So, the Steel Dragons. Well, they got started slow-like. Not all at once by any means, and honestly, folks still aren't really sure how he pulled it off exactly. I heard through a friend of mine over at Morrow Rock Radio that what sparked the birth of the Dragons was an Arasaka family spat. I heard that Yorinobu discovered his father's true plans, whatever the hell those might have been, and found himself so horrified that he decided right then and there that Arasaka had to fall. What did he learn that caused him to rebel? God fucking knows, chooms, but how bad must it have been? Am I right? Anyway, once old Yorinobu got it in his head that he wanted to topple his daddy's dreams, he got to work. He maintained ties to Arasaka and its company structure, giving himself the ability to walk both the street and the corporate boardroom. He used this bridge to bring leverage to the table, and he started going around to all the Bosoku gangs in Japan and enlisting them in a crusade to bring down Arasaka. Alright, I know I probably mispronounced that, and we'll probably talk more about these guys later on in another episode, but a Bosoku gang is kind of like the nomads we have over here. Honestly, exactly like them. They roam the countryside of Japan in mobile motorcades of bikes, cars, trucks, you name it. These gangs lived on the move, traveling the endless highways of Japan, and boy, they really hated Arasaka. I mean, really hated. I guess that ain't really news, but Yorinobu, he managed to bring them together through that hatred. He offered them access to Klept Arasaka goods, top-of-the-line hardware, access to all of their dirty secrets. Yori only wanted one thing in exchange. Arasaka destroyed. It took time. Months and months, but eventually the Bosoku gang started to respond. More and more joined Yorinobu's banner, and the Steel Dragons went from a curiosity to a serious heavyweight organization. They even expanded internationally, and that is how they ended up here, in the dear old City of Dreams, by the year 2020. The Dragons were a big force in the city back then, a regular player, though people had mixed views of Yorinobu himself. A lot of people saw him as a poser, a spoiled rich kid that came down to the streets to play. Fuck, a lot of people I know still see him that way. Poser or not, though, the Dragons did take the fight to Arasaka. Can't deny that. They would raid their factories, fuck up their corpo suits whenever they bumped into them on the street. They certainly stole more fancy Arasaka tech than any other gang I can think of in recent memory. The Steel Dragons like to rock tricked-out nomad bikes and vehicles, like I said, and they oftentimes were sporting top-of-the-line Arasaka tech courtesy of their behind-the-scenes pipeline. They heavily customized their rigs, not just for the job, but for the individual, with many Dragons pouring untold hours of personal maintenance into their rides. Like I said, not very different from the nomads we got over here. The Dragons preferred to wear black leather jumpsuits that they modeled off the old uniform for kamikaze pilots back in the days when nations went to war instead of corporations. These outfits often would display kanji characters proclaiming the game's name, their hate for Arasaka, or their personal ethos. And they would have an internal structure that consisted of a rigid hierarchy that in many ways resembled that of feudal Japan. The leaders of local groups of dragons tried to keep tight control over their own specific gang. The dragons ended up getting dragged into the Fourth Corporate War, fighting for Militech against Arasaka. Militech had a tendency to use them for covert actions behind enemy lines, the dragons' mobility and knowledge of Arasaka operations proving vital to the Militech war effort. This also made them a target, however. There is absolutely no way Saburo would let Yorinobu pose any kind of true threat to Arasaka. I mean, that old codger, there's no way he let Yori out of the house without knowing exactly where he was and what he was doing at all times. The dragons existed because Saburo allowed them to exist. If you ask me, probably because he was a little too soft on his son. But suddenly, during the war, that ceased to matter. It's crazy how it tends to turn people against their own. The dragons were all but wiped out, and by the time Silverhand dropped his nuke in downtown, they'd been almost entirely destroyed. It's why you don't see any more steelheads strutting around the city. They all dead. I've heard that the dragons do still have a presence in Japan, that some of them survived the Arasaka kill teams, but Yorinobu ended up going back home to daddy well chastised. This is not to say his resistance ended, though. We're going to talk about Arasaka itself another time, Chooms, but suffice it to say, old Yori is a huge part of the reason behind the factionalization of the Chrysanthemum. And he might be in charge of the company now, but boy howdy does he still seem to hate Arasaka. I mean, why else would he be provoking Militech by upping Arasaka security forces here, Why would he blame them for his father's death? Don't you hate Daddy Yori? Why do you care who offed him? I mean, was all that steel dragon shit just the world's most expensive tantrum? And now you've matured? What's the deal, man? The steel dragons. A spoiled rich kid's attempt at pissing off his family, or an honest attempt to bring down the Arasaka power structure? I don't really know, Chooms, and I guess it doesn't matter much anymore. The steel dragons haven't been seen in Night City in decades, not since the end of the last corporate war. I guess I really wanted to explore them to give you a peek into the man who's currently running this shithole. And make no mistake, the mayor may be in charge, but old Yori is the one pulling the strings. Arasaka, their security forces supplement the cops. The question of whether or not the drive behind the dragons was legit, whether Yorinobu really does hate Arasaka and all it stands for, suddenly all this shit is important to Night City again. Because if he does hate Arasaka and all it stands for, if he is sworn to bring down the company by any means necessary, then what better way than by drawing them into another conflict with Militech? Arasaka barely survived the last war. More importantly, if war is Yorinobu's goal, what does that mean for all us normal folks here in Night City trapped on the fucking streets, huh? Food for thought, Chooms. Food for thought. But alright, enough jabber out of me. It's time to get back to the music. This has been your sweetest welcome to Night City. Until next time, all you chromed out hard chargers, take care of yourselves out there, and remember, burn corpo shit.